Black Waitress is humiliated for her scars until a veteran sees the tattoo that changes everything. Maya Thompson adjusted her long sleeves for the 100th time that morning, ensuring the fabric covered the intricate network of scars that mapped her left arm like a topographical study of survival. At 28, she had learned to navigate the world with careful precision, understanding that her appearance invited questions she wasn't ready to answer and judgments she couldn't control. The morning rush at Riverside Diner brought its usual mix of commuters and regulars, each absorbed in their own routines while she moved between tables with practiced invisibility. Her uniform was always immaculate, her service flawless, yet she felt the weight of curious glances that followed her careful movements. The scars told a story she rarely shared, marking moments of courage that few would recognize beneath their surface assumptions about damage and difference. The breakfast crowd included the usual collection of downtown professionals, construction workers grabbing quick meals, and elderly regulars who had claimed their favorite booths for decades. Maya knew their orders by heart, their small preferences and gentle quirks that made each interaction predictable and safe. She had worked at Riverside for 2 years, building a reputation for reliability and kindness that earned decent tips and steady employment. Yet beneath her professional competence lay a deeper story of service and sacrifice that her customers couldn't see. The sleeve that covered her scars also concealed a tattoo that held profound meaning, a symbol of honor that connected her to experiences most civilians would never understand or appreciate. Among the morning diners sat Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, a woman whose silver hair and expensive handbag spoke of inherited privilege and unexamined assumptions about the world's natural order. At 73, she had lived her entire life within comfortable boundaries that separated her experiences from those of people she considered fundamentally different from herself. Her weekly breakfast at Riverside was part of a routine that included charitable donations and social gatherings that reinforced her sense of moral superiority without requiring genuine engagement with complexity or nuance. She observed the world through lenses that simplified human experience into categories of worthy and unworthy, proper and improper, familiar and threatening. Maya's presence in her line of sight represented something that didn't fit comfortably within these established frameworks. Mrs. Whitfield's discomfort manifested in small gestures. The way she pulled her purse closer when Maya approached, the slight tension in her voice when placing orders, the careful avoidance of direct eye contact that suggested distaste rather than indifference. These microaggressions accumulated over weeks of interaction, creating an atmosphere of subtle hostility that Maya recognized but couldn't directly address without risking her employment. The dynamic represented broader patterns of social interaction where appearance determined worth, where scars were read as signs of poor choices rather than survival, where service work was viewed as evidence of limited potential rather than economic necessity. Maya endured these interactions with dignity, understanding that her livelihood depended on maintaining professional composure regardless of personal cost. The morning's fragile peace shattered when Maya's sleeve caught on the corner of Mrs. Whitfield's table, riding up to reveal the scarred skin beneath. The exposure lasted only seconds, but Mrs. Whitfield's sharp intake of breath drew attention from nearby diners, who turned to witness the unfolding drama. "My goodness," Mrs. Whitfield exclaimed, her voice carrying across the diner with theatrical horror. "What happened to your arm? Those scars are disturbing. Perhaps you should consider working somewhere less public." The words struck Maya like physical blows, each syllable designed to wound and diminish. The diner fell silent as other customers processed the cruelty they had just witnessed, their breakfast conversations forgotten in the wake of such deliberate humiliation. Maya's face burned with shame and anger as she felt the weight of dozens of eyes examining her exposed scars with mixture of curiosity, pity, and judgment. She had spent years building confidence and professional competence. Yet one moment of accidental exposure had reduced her to an object of spectacle and disgust. Her hands trembled as she pulled her sleeve down, the fabric feeling inadequate to shield her from the renewed scrutiny of people who had never bothered to see her as fully human. "I apologize if my appearance offends you," she managed, her voice steady despite the internal earthquake threatening her composure. The response was professional, dignified, and heartbreaking in its acceptance of undeserved shame. Mrs. Whitfield pressed her advantage with the cruelty of someone unaccustomed to being challenged or corrected. "I'm simply saying that people with conditions like yours might be better suited to work that doesn't involve serving food to respectable people. It's about appropriate standards and consideration for others." Her words were chosen carefully, maintaining plausible deniability while maximizing psychological damage. She spoke with the authority of someone who had never questioned her right to pass judgment on others' worth, never considered that her comfort might be less important than another person's dignity. The surrounding diners shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the injustice, but uncertain whether intervention was appropriate or welcome. The humiliation deepened as Maya realized that her livelihood was threatened not just by one customer's cruelty, but by the broader social dynamics that made such attacks possible and effective. She needed this job to support herself and her elderly grandmother, yet staying meant accepting continued degradation from people who saw her scars as evidence of unworthiness. The choice between dignity and survival felt impossible, each option carrying costs she could barely afford. As she stood there, sleeve pulled down and spirit battered, Maya wondered how many more such moments she could endure before something essential within her broke beyond repair. The diner's atmosphere remained thick with tension, witness to a cruelty that diminished everyone present. From a corner booth, James Rodriguez watched the interaction with growing anger and recognition that cut deeper than surface outrage. At 45, the former Marine sergeant carried his own invisible wounds from 3 tours in Afghanistan, understanding intimately the complex relationship between scars and service, between visible damage and hidden strength. His weathered hands gripped his coffee cup as he witnessed Maya's dignified response to unconscionable cruelty. Something about her bearing, her controlled composure under attack, triggered memories of soldiers he had served alongside, individuals whose courage was measured not in moments of glory, but in quiet persistence through impossible circumstances. The way she carried herself spoke of military bearing, of training that had shaped her responses to stress and confrontation. As Maya turned to retreat from Mrs. Whitfield's verbal assault, James caught a glimpse of something that made his breath catch. Beneath the fabric of her sleeve, partially visible through the gap created by her movement, was the distinctive outline of a military tattoo. Specifically, the emblem of a combat medic badge, a symbol earned only through service under fire, through saving lives while risking one's own. The recognition hit him like lightning, transforming his understanding of everything he had just witnessed. This wasn't simply a customer being cruel to a waitress. This was a civilian attacking a veteran who had earned her scars in service to the very country that now struggled to accept her return to ordinary life. James stood slowly, his movement deliberate and commanding in a way that military training never fully leaves the body. The diner's attention shifted to him as he approached Maya, his expression serious but gentle. "Excuse me, miss," he said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard and respected. "I couldn't help but notice your combat medic badge. I'm former Marine Corps, serve in Helmand Province. Thank you for your service." The words were simple, but they carried weight that transformed the entire atmosphere of the diner. Maya's eyes widened as she realized she had been recognized not for her scars, but for the honor they represented. The validation was immediate and profound. Maya straightened unconsciously, her military posture returning as she met James's gaze with the clear eyes of someone who had been truly seen for the first time in months. "Thank you, Sergeant," she replied, her voice steady now with the confidence of someone whose sacrifices had been acknowledged. The exchange lasted only moments, but it shifted the power dynamics in the room completely. Mrs. Whitfield, who had been preparing another cutting remark, found herself speechless as she realized she had been attacking someone whose service record likely exceeded anything in her own family's history of comfortable privilege. The other diners began to understand that they had witnessed not just cruelty, but a fundamental misreading of character and worth. James turned to address Mrs. Whitfield directly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had earned the right to speak truth to power. "Ma'am, I think you should know that you just humiliated a combat veteran who earned those scars, saving lives in Afghanistan. This woman is a hero who deserves your respect, not your judgment." His words were measured but firm, designed to educate rather than embarrass, though the effect was undeniably corrective. The diner fell silent again, but this time the silence carried weight and meaning rather than discomfort. Mrs. Whitfield's face flushed as she processed the magnitude of her error, her carefully constructed superiority crumbling in the face of actual service and sacrifice. Maya found her voice returning as the shame that had paralyzed her moments before transformed into something stronger and more grounded. "I served 2 tours as a combat medic," she said quietly, her words carrying across the now silent diner. "These scars came from an IED explosion while I was treating wounded soldiers. I saved 3 lives that day before being evacuated myself." The revelation was delivered without drama or self-pity, simply as fact that needed to be understood. Her military training had taught her to report situations clearly and concisely, and that skill served her now as she reclaimed her narrative from those who had presumed to judge it. The atmosphere in the diner shifted palpably as customers processed this new information, their understanding of the morning's events undergoing radical revision. Several patrons approached Maya to thank her for her service, their earlier silence transformed into active support and recognition. The manager, who had been watching nervously from behind the counter, stepped forward to assure Maya that she was valued and protected as an employee. Mrs. Whitfield found herself isolated in her corner booth, her earlier confidence replaced by the uncomfortable realization that she had publicly attacked someone whose character far exceeded her own. The transformation was swift but profound. Maya no longer needed to hide her scars or apologize for her appearance. Instead, she stood as living testament to service, sacrifice, and the resilience that military experience had forged within her. The tattoo that had remained hidden for so long became a symbol of honor rather than shame, a marker of identity that commanded respect rather than pity. James remained nearby, his presence serving as both protection and validation, one veteran supporting another in the civilian world that often struggled to understand their experiences. The diner had become a space of recognition and respect, where true worth was measured by character rather than appearance. Word of the morning's events spread quickly through the local veteran community, creating a network of support that Maya hadn't known existed. Former service members began frequenting Riverside Diner specifically to show solidarity, turning the restaurant into an unofficial gathering place for those who understood the challenges of transitioning from military to civilian life. Maya found herself connected to resources she had been unaware of: job training programs for veterans, support groups for those dealing with visible injuries, and advocacy organizations working to combat discrimination against former service members. The isolation she had felt for months began lifting as she discovered a community that valued her experience and understood her struggles. James became more than just a momentary ally. He emerged as a mentor and friend who helped Maya navigate the civilian world with greater confidence and purpose. He introduced her to other veterans who had successfully transitioned to civilian careers, showing her that military skills translated into valuable professional capabilities beyond traditional expectations. Together, they began volunteering at veteran support organizations, with Maya's medical training proving invaluable in helping other former service members access health care and disability services. Her experience at the diner had revealed not just the prejudice that veterans faced, but also the power of recognition and support in overcoming those challenges. Mrs. Whitfield, meanwhile, underwent her own transformation as the reality of her actions forced uncomfortable self-examination. She reached out to veteran organizations to learn about the challenges faced by returning service members, particularly those dealing with visible injuries. Her charitable contributions shifted from feel-good gestures to meaningful support for veteran reintegration programs. The encounter at Riverside had shattered her comfortable assumptions about worth and appearance, forcing her to confront the ways her privilege had blinded her to the experiences of others. Her apology to Maya was accompanied by substantial donations to veteran support causes and a commitment to educating others about the realities of military service. The diner itself became a symbol of transformation and recognition. The management installed a small memorial honoring local veterans, and Maya's story became part of the restaurant's identity as a place that valued service and character over superficial judgments. Her confidence grew daily as she no longer felt the need to hide her scars or apologize for her appearance. Instead, she wore her military experience as a badge of honor, helping other veterans feel welcome and understood. The breakfast crowd gradually shifted to include more former service members who found in Riverside a space where their experiences were valued and their sacrifices recognized. Months later, Maya stood before a group of high school students, sharing her story as part of a veteran outreach program. Her scars were visible now, displayed without shame as she spoke about service, sacrifice, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize true character. The students listened intently as she described both the challenges of military service and the difficulties of returning to civilian life with visible reminders of that service. Her message was simple but powerful. Everyone carries stories of struggle and triumph, and judgment based on appearance alone reveals more about the observer than the observed. James had helped her develop this speaking program, understanding that Maya's story could educate civilians about veteran experiences while inspiring other former service members to embrace their own narratives with pride. Together, they had created workshops for businesses and organizations about recognizing and supporting veterans in their communities. The program had grown beyond their initial expectations, reaching thousands of people who had never considered the challenges faced by those transitioning from military to civilian life. Maya's transformation from hidden shame to public advocacy demonstrated the power of recognition and support in healing both individual wounds and social divisions. The impact extended far beyond Maya's personal journey. Mrs. Whitfield had become an unlikely advocate for veteran causes, using her social connections to raise awareness and funds for support programs. The diner continued to serve as a gathering place for veterans, creating community where none had existed before. Local businesses began implementing veteran-friendly policies, recognizing that former service members brought valuable skills and perspectives to civilian workplaces. The ripple effects of that morning's encounter continued expanding, touching lives and changing attitudes throughout the community. Most significantly, Maya had learned to see her scars not as marks of damage, but as symbols of strength and service that commanded respect rather than pity. Her story became a testament to the transformative power of being truly seen and recognized for one's authentic worth. The tattoo that had once hidden beneath her sleeve now served as a bridge between her military service and civilian life, connecting her to a community that understood her experience and valued her contributions. The mourning that had begun with humiliation had become the foundation for dignity, purpose, and the kind of recognition that heals both individual wounds and social divisions. Maya's journey from hidden shame to public recognition became a catalyst for understanding that transformed an entire community's relationship with those who serve. Her story reminds us that beneath every surface lies depths of experience and character that transcend appearance. That true recognition requires the courage to see beyond our comfortable assumptions. In a world quick to judge by what it sees, how might we learn to honor the invisible courage that walks among us every day?